Hey guys, I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
Welcome back to this week's No Limits, the Scot Harvath Podcast. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing great. Can we just take a minute and say thank you, Brad Thor? Thank you for this book, for all of the books, even shouting us out on social media, helping promote our new YouTube channel where we're posting all these podcast episodes. Brad Thor is the real deal, the complete package.
We should reach out to him and see if he'd be willing to come back and talk about Spymaster and Backlash. I have so many questions about like where his mind was and, why he decided to, go this hard reboot. But I'm thankful for it. And it's crazy. You texted me today and I wrote down this thing, and this book feels completely different than anything we've read in a long time. It reminds me, it has that different feel, kind of like The Apostle did.
Yes.
It has, like Lions did. It almost feels like a different author. He uses it's quintessential Brad, but at the same time, it's elevating, wiping away the formula. Like,
Sure.
maybe, we get a little bit of rundown in some of his books. Not rundown, I should say that. There's a lot of recurring themes. There's a lot of recurring themes in all of these thriller series, especially when you have to crank out a new book every single year. But recently, we've been hitting a lot of these storylines that are just like, I got to get a guy to get a guy to get a guy and run through the ladder. And we've seen like cases where that was intriguing to us and we really enjoyed that plot scenario. And literally like the book right before that one is the same scenario. We didn't quite vibe with it. Here, breaking the mold.
Yes.
We're not doing that. This book, in a sense, is very isolationist. There are a few, characters that we quickly become to love. And, Christina, just to shout out one, the ghosts that of Laura that he's seeing.
The team up at the end.
Right. And I think, he has to fight a freaking wolf. He has to battle the elements. It's not your typical, there are shoot 'em up, got to get the Spetsnaz, which all that action.
Sure. There's bad guys.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But, to put him in this like lone survivor in the wilderness, and I guess I'm brought back to Lines a lot because of the whole cold snow. We know that Scott is this is his element. If any one of our characters was to be shot down in a plane over Siberia, I think I'm picking Scot Harvath to be with 10 out of 10 times. Well, what did you think about this book?
Oh, completely. I guess we're jumping right into it, guys. Backlash. We'll do a part 1 and part 2, but we read the whole book because this is a book you just can't stop.
You can't put it down.
You can't put it down. We can't talk about the first half, then the second half as two separate things, because you mentioned a few other criticisms we've had along the way. One that's reoccurred in every series we've read is making a complete novel, not having an awesome first half. Exactly. Awesome first half, second part felt like a different book, didn't hit, or the ending hit really hard, but it took a while to get going in the beginning. This one is the complete package. Like I said in the beginning, it's firing on all cylinders. It's new. It's out of the box. Because we're on book, 18 of the series, plus 2 or 3 short stories thrown in there. It got a little formulaic at times. We were kind of bogged down in our discussion saying some of the same things. This one cracks it open. And Spymaster had an ending that required something big. You had to follow up Spymaster with something absolutely massive. And Brad did that. Kudos, hats off. He pulled it off. And I'm just going to say, right off the bat, this is the best book in the series. I'm going there. Big theme tonight is, does this beat Lions? Does it take Lions down from that one spot? And I don't know if it's recency bias, but coming out of this one, I'm like, hell yeah, this is a complete book.
I'm 100% on board with that. I think, maybe when we do our recap, rank all the books in order, I might feel a little differently. Like just coming out of this book, I felt so invigorated, like,
Yeah.
and I want to mention too, something about Spy Master, kind of, we were like a little bit down early on in Spy Master. The ending definitely brought it all around. But I do think this, we've said it, there's been multiple cases of this, like which book in, there's a couple of times where like when you bring back a plot point a couple books down the road, it kind of re-elevates another book.
Yep.
This book brings Spy Master up a level,
It
like
absolutely
by having
does.
that continuation of that story arc and executing it.
Yeah. But there's another layer to it too, because you're completely right. It makes Spy Master better. It satisfies the ending of Spy Master where you have no idea where Brad's going to take us. And it satisfies, completely satisfies. But it's operating on even another level because it's almost the perfect independent book. Brad has always said he wants to sell to new readers as well, so they don't feel, encumbered by missing the first 16, 17 books, that it's hard for them to get into a new one. He really tries to include all readers, even new ones to the genre or to the series. And I would literally say to somebody, start with Backlash.
You could.
You either start with Lions or you start with Backlash. There's no other options in the Brad Thor series. I mean, maybe Spy Master, but Spy Master can get a little long-winded, and if you don't stick with it and get to that book number 2, you might not see the genius that is Brad. So, I mean, if you read Backlash, you know what happens at the end of Spy Master, so that could be a little disappointing. But either way, it stands on its own. This book is a perfect standalone novel. It's a perfect kind of summation of a major time in a character's life, even 18 books in. It's a perfect book number 18, and it's the perfect solo book. I don't know how to explain it differently. And I will even say that was my experience. I picked this one up in COVID. I remember 2020. I think it came out 2019, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I didn't get it at first when it first came out. I wasn't too into reading at the time. I wasn't that engaged. This was the one that got me back. This is probably the book most responsible for this podcast.
Probably, yeah.
Because I probably had read this one right about when you and me and Tom and all the guys were doing our COVID virtual Zoom hangouts. And I was like, yo, have you read any good books lately? I probably to that point hadn't read a book in a couple of years, like a good book that I enjoyed. Then I read Backlash. Boom. I remember just wanting to read them all again. I think I picked up a couple of Mitch Rapps right after that. I signed up right away for all the newsletters and marketing promo. I wanted to get Near Dark when it came out in 2020. Backlash is the book that got me back into the series, made me want to talk about it with my friends, with you. And I'm going to say this book is a big part of the reason we have this podcast, on my end at least.
No, it's on my end too, because I feel like I was getting into audiobook reading during grad school. I had done like a bunch of series. I had done like Harry Potter. I'd done Game of Thrones. And then I finally wanted to come back around to, those books that Tom had given me in 2013. And because of the library, I was using the library at the time. And I had to sort of depend on what I could get from the library that would determine like what I would read. And so I got a bunch of Brad in a row. I had to keep going. And that's when we started talking. And then I like sort of switched back to Mitch Rapp. And yeah, now and I remember us having this conversation because Near Dark was coming out. I think Near Dark was the 2020 release, right?
Yeah, I think.
So having that conversation, reading Backlash, I remember getting up to the Spy Master cliffhanger, then pushing into Backlash. Yeah, now this book, huge influence on me as a reader, influence on us as a podcast. So, I mean, thank you, Brad. Like we got to thank we got to thank Mitch and Vince, but also thank you, Brad.
Mitch and Vince, Scott and Brad. I mean, that's just perfect pairings. It just feels so comfortable, like talking about them as if they're people in our lives. 2 of them are characters in a story, in a novel, and 2 of them are authors who we have no business, knowing or interacting with. And they just became such an integral part of these last 4 or 5 years. It's crazy how life is so different in many ways. And one of them is that these books changed a lot of the hours I spend in a day. What I'm thinking and what I'm doing and working on is with those names, Scott, Brad, Vince, and Mitch. And like, pre-2020, that would have never been a thing. I read a book every once in a while, a couple a year, put them on the shelf, whatever. And now I'm consumed by them. I think consumed is the word for my thoughts.
We're pumping out, at least at this moment, 4 books a month, and sometimes more. It brought us into this community of wonderful people like that. We would have never have known, all our patrons. We would have never known the bus. We would have never got to meet Kyle, meet Brad, meet Jack, Ward, S.A. Cosby, like all
great
I.S.
people.
Berry, like, everyone that we've been able to has been kind enough to interact with us, these 2 little schmucks on this podcast. And it's just fun, like it's super fun. And like it's because of great works of fiction like Backlash that keeps us coming back for more.
100%. It's so true. It's crazy. You mentioned some great people, but Ward Larson I was thinking of because in our recent interview talking Dark Vector with him, he brought up Louis L'Amour's survival book. He was talking about he was inspired writing a survivalist story in his most recent one by this Louis L'Amour book I never read, but he's, and I kept thinking about that. I was like, I bet Brad had an influence like that. Ward had his muse in writing a survivalist story in Russian Siberia. I wonder what influences Brad is drawing on. And something crazy that came to me was you mentioned the wolf attack, and I'm thinking like, this book reads so cinematically. It's like you're watching The Revenant, with Leo.
Or did you ever see The Grey with Liam Neeson?
No. Also in the Arctic?
Where, it's about like fending himself off from wolves. Yeah.
Dude, but okay, that sounds like a good one. I can't think of a closer storyline than The 12th Man. Have you seen The 12th Man?
No, I have not.
Dude, it's about a group of Norwegian soldiers. I think they were on a boat, and it was occupied northern Norway. So they're on the fringes, and something happens. They get stranded. I think they were doing something with telecommunications. The Nazis get them, basically kill 11 of the guys, but they can't find the 12th man. And it's an escape story where he has to go across Norway, get into Sweden. And he comes into a cabin. He has to interact with the Sami people. So the locals actually use reindeers to, I'm not going to give it away, but reindeers like here with the carcasses and the blankets they put over them. The reindeer play a very crucial role in him getting across the border to Sweden. And it was so similar. Dude, I pulled up the trailer. I don't know if we're allowed to do this, but it's so close to this book. I want to play it for you. And if I have to cut it out of the final version, we can cut it. But just look at how similar to some of these things are. I watched this movie a few years ago, and I'm reading this book. I'm like, what the hell was that movie? Because I'm literally picturing everything Scot Harvath is doing. And the visuals from this movie just keep popping into my head.
Oh, wow.
Check this out, The 12th Man.
Elf. Wo ist der 12. Mann?
Wir haben ihn in den Fjord reingelegt.
In the water.
Er ist nicht wieder hochgekommen. Der Mann ist tot.
Bis wir den Körper gefunden haben, er lebt.
That's a line in the book.
Exactly. The Nazis come after him. Unless they have a body. They think he's still out there. He's under the ice. Wait till you see the cabin. The little hunter cabin he has out in. It's like...
Weiter!
a plane shooting at them across the open
Wissen
snow.
Sie, Sie werden kühner. Ich schwöre Ihnen, das Letzte, was wir jetzt noch brauchen, ist, dass Sie ein neues Symbol finden.
The Nazis coming after him like the Wagner group. And there's the herd. Indian herd on the border. Didn't show much of the cabin, but there was a hunter-trapper cabin.
Dude, I gotta watch this movie now.
Dude, it's so good. It came out in 2018, a year before
Oh, wow.
this book. It was like, it's uncanny how similar some of the things Scot Harvath has to do with this guy who's on the run, on the lam.
Yeah, that line that they say, like, until I see a body, he's alive. Like
he's out there.
That's a direct line from the book. Yeah.
And there's a character who's like a Yosef who's coming after them, like maniacal dude, hell-bent on getting him.
Dude, that looks sick.
Maybe we watch it. Maybe we do a little podcast movie here.
Oh, we haven't done one of those in a long time.
Since probably American Assassin on the Mitch Rapp Pod. Or maybe The Gray Man. Probably The Gray Man.
Yeah, The Gray Man.
On Thriller Pod. So Scot Harvath Pod doesn't have its own movie review yet. That'll have to be the one.
Okay.
Yeah, dude, it's great. You'll watch it and you'll think constantly about Backlash.
Yeah, for sure. Just seeing the trailer. I could see where you made the connection. Yeah, and this book is highly, highly rated. Just on Goodreads, 4.4, Amazon, 4.7. Both of them have in the tens of thousands of reviews. We get a nice quote from the real book spy himself. Awe, emotion, nonstop action, relentless pacing makes Backlash another one-night read from Brad Thor.
Completely.
I love this other one. It's like in the most explosive novel Brad Thor has ever written, page after captivating page of action, intrigue, loyalty, and betrayal will keep you hooked until the very last sentence.
Perfect.
100% right.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah, let's get into some of these storylines, some of this plot.
Yeah, very succinct way of putting the plot together. I've done that in the form of a limerick.
Oh, you have one this time. Nice.
I have one this time, and it's also pretty much beat for beat what happens in the book. So, after surviving a nasty plane crash, to Finland, Scot's on a mad dash. With aid from Christina in the Sami's arena, Brad Thor's best book is Backlash.
Oh, he put it in the limerick.
That was it. I was going to drop that bomb on you right away. That this is, it's taking down Lions. I'm a sucker too for nostalgia. In the Mitch Rapp Pod, I was always praising term limits, always praising transfer power. The early books, when you first meet a character, mean a lot to me. So Lions of Lucerne means a lot to me. But this one is just an all in all. It's like a heavyweight bout. Those two can go back and forth, but this one is just well-rounded, and it's the complete package.
Yeah, I don't think there's another book that comes close in the series than Backlash does.
So what do you think? The plane crash, was this a satisfying way for you to follow up the cliffhanger that was Spymaster?
Oh, I love that we just immediately kick it off with the plane crash. No messing around, no like going to some other place. He was taken. We get to it. We're quickly like filled in on all the information. And I love how, sort of like right after the initial action in the plane crash, we hop back to the murder scene.
Yes.
And we're getting that whole, detective vibe. Like, it doesn't go too heavy into it, but it's very interesting, like just to have, we're not left in the dark about what happened. And I enjoyed that. We're put in the sense of Scott has to, oh shit, what's going to happen now? He's going to have to get out of this somehow, some way, somehow. There's this, the one Yosef is missing, like he's sort of looming. It's kind of interesting how like he just like kind of was buried alive and he's still alive, but and then immediately we cut to the raw emotion we're going to see with the scalping and the brutal beatdown of one of the Spetsnaz soldiers.
Yep.
Brad literally pulls no punches, like right off the bat, in showing Scott's raw emotion. We're constantly throughout the entire novel. We're in Scott's head. How like we didn't know that he had just gotten married. He constantly blaming himself for losing Laura, losing Reed, losing Carlton, even the corpsman. Like it keeps on coming back, and he has to constantly fight through that. It's like this third character, this third villain. That's not the Russians. It's
his demons.
His demons.
Yeah.
And his willingness to fight his willingness to push on. Multiple times he wants to just sleep. Sometimes he does, like he collapses, but in the end he's able to pull through. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's amazing.
The rage keeps him going. There's a few times where he's talking about realizing the importance as an operator of controlling that rage and the emotion. Don't make it personal. Vince Flynn line, a Stan Hurley lesson. But he's like, screw that. By making it personal is what's going to motivate me psychologically to pull my body through this. And so, yeah, one time I think he's skiing. He's about to lay down. Another, he falls in the water. He's about to stop. And not only does his inner demons motivate him through vengeance and rage to keep going, but Lara does, the visions as well, the memories he has of her, the messages he knows she would be whispering to him. And that keeps him going as well. And so it's three things. Because let's also shout out the locals, good people like Christina and the Samis and all the different people who are willing to help him. You have to have the perfect combination of those, or he's dead. He's clearly dead. But I was bought in that those three things, his personal rage and motive. Let's add another one, his training. He's a Polar SEAL. He's been with Team 2. So he has this survivalist training. It's almost like Scott is the perfect person at the perfect point in the series where we've seen all this build up to get him here, combined with he treats people right, whether it's the Loadmaster, right? He had to ask him for the key. He said, I'll come help you. He tried to save him. He did what he could for him. So at the same time he's scalping dudes, he's also treating the people who deserve to be treated the right way. Christina, the Samis, the Loadmaster. So he's like this perfect character of pure rage monster man, but also he has a soul. And without both of those dynamics, he would have died. Any one of us would have died right away. But he's the perfect combination of every skill level, every psychological profile, the physical profile that you need to get through this. And so for buy-in, dude, while this is a pretty wild story, I'm bought into everything. It's, to me, very realistic that Scott's somebody who can survive this. 99.9% of people can't, but he can in this scenario. And all the survivalist stuff checked for me too. He was hiding out in that crate for a little while. He had to start the fire. He's going through his rations. I felt like Brad had to do a lot of research with people who know their stuff about what supplies can you take off these guys? How can you use it? What would the plane be outfitted with and equipped with? Like at one point, he uses the tube from the oxygen masks to kind of use as like a lasso to grab one of those like ratchet straps, like a tie-down strap. And he used the tie-down strap to get the keys. Like he's using every tool in his arsenal and it all checks out. I'm like, I could see that happening.
Yeah, and what I found myself loving is like the minutia that Brad puts into it in terms of, taking the time to put on page, like him scavenging and going, doing his inventory, like literally explaining everything that he found and how it's going to be useful.
Yep.
And,
the condoms.
Yeah. And I guess like it reminds me a lot of The Martian. I don't know if you read that book.
Sure, for sure. Yeah. Where the physics check out, the survivalist stuff checks out here.
But most of that book is literally just one man and, he has to MacGyver the shit as
potatoes
out of potatoes, in order to survive. And here's the same thing. He's got to find a way. And if you imagine that like a poor version of the story wouldn't have those kind of details.
It wouldn't have those details, or it wouldn't check.
And I also think Brad has put in the work,
to
make us believe that Scott could do this.
Yes,
like
that's exactly
through
it.
the 18 books.
Yep,
that's why I'm 100% on board with you with this buy-in. That at times it's kind of crazy. 2 different wolf attacks, but I believe that Brad would be able to come or Scott would be able to come through this.
He knows how to fight the wolf. He would do those, like he's putting his arm up in the right position and everything checks out. Another thing that checks out, kind of to jump to the ending a little bit, even the politics, because you could see some people being like, how does this get to the desk of the president? Why does the president authorize crossing, fighter jets into Russian airspace? Why do all these people want to insert to save this one guy? But, dude, that's why it's at a perfect time in the series. If you wrote this as book number 2 or 3 in the series, who's this? Why does everybody trust him? Why is Nicholas, doing this for him? Why do they all have each other's backs like this? It would be almost too unbelievable. Like, why is Sloane putting herself out there? Why is Haney taking the lead, right? He becomes the team leader. Scott even wants to question him a few times. He's like, nope, Haney's earned it. Who I thought was injured. I thought Haney was going to have to take a desk job for some really bad injury 2 books ago. Am I wrong about that?
I can't remember.
Maybe they were just joking about that. I think he got pretty injured on an op, and they were like, oh, now you have to work at an office job, but probably just some ribbing. But like, we can even buy that the U.S. president has Scott's back. He would be willing to blackmail Peshkov about all this, and freezing his assets. He would have the people, and Bob McGee would go to bat for him like this. The fact that we built up every one of those names I just said makes sense of why they go to these lengths to get Scott back. When if this was a new character or a lesser character, be like, what? This isn't. They wouldn't. The FBI, the CIA, they wouldn't be teaming up like this. They wouldn't get it on the president's desk, and it just wouldn't go this far to send fighter jets into Russia, invade Russian airspace over this. But in this series, it checks. Completely works out because Brad did the work.
To have the president be like, you're going to get my guy out of there, whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Like, what are the rules of engagement? There are none.
There are none. Yep. Shoot to kill anyone. Only for Scott.
Like you said, like if you try to do this a little bit earlier, not the scenario, but a situation like this, it's like, all right, sure. But it's 100% believable here because of the work you put in, getting us to invest in this character, invest in the relationships that this character has with the other book characters. 100%.
Because of what they did to Reed and Lydia Ryan and Reed Carlton, right? Like, if Spymaster didn't happen, maybe all those mechanisms and organizations wouldn't be willing to go this far. But because Spymaster just happened and it's raw, the U.S. president, the director of the CIA, they have the bones to say, we're coming in. Russia, you fucked us. Like, we're not holding any punches.
Yeah, and another thing, we get a little bit of clarity about Spymaster that we were questioning last time. It was all a ruse. I mean, yes, he is going downhill, but not as fast as we were being told in the last book. It was all a plan. Scott was bred in on Matterhorn and knew that he wanted to keep this wanted to keep that asset super important, and had developed this entire plan to, one, it was supposed to keep Reed safe. That ended up not working. But 2, to allow Reed to pass on, but also maintain this, really tangible, strong asset that they had. Which I'm glad, because I thought it was like too quick for them to be like, he's blown. He's blown. Like he's his mental faculties are, I don't know. I felt like it was like did Reed a little bit dirty if like that was the actual case. Like, yeah, that's how it actually happens with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and stuff like that.
It was probably a ticking time bomb of like, if it wasn't happening yet, it was going to be the next few years. Right. So they were getting ahead of it and leveraging it while they could.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Arthur is an interesting one because Nicholas goes to bat for him. He not goes to bat for him, but feels like he could either still be useful. Did you catch that at the end? And he tries to reason like, yes, Arthur gave the Russians the location. We knew he was a mole, so of course he did. But we can't blame him for them hitting Lara and Reed and Lydia Ryan. He didn't know what the Russians would do with that information.
He had to suspect, though.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's like a long game type thing of still wanting to be able to use him because he is such a good asset that we don't need to blow him over this. And now if he directly said, let me help you organize an attack to kill Reed Carlton, that's one thing. But he just tipped the Russians off to the location, not knowing what the Russians would do. At first I was like, oh, come on, Nicholas. I wanted to see Arthur be rounded up, right?
Yeah.
The hit list at the end where Scott goes buck wild on dudes. Interesting. We'll have to talk about those last like 2 to 3 chapters. I wanted to see Arthur on that list. I really did. And there was kind of this weak attempt. I think it was Nicholas trying to tell McGee and the president to not unleash Scott.
Essentially, like, to keep him as an asset. Yeah.
Yeah. But what's Scott's take on this? Wouldn't he want to get him?
I imagine so. Like, to me, if I was in that situation, I don't care how big of an asset you are. You are literally the reason why this happened to my wife, my mentor, 2 friends. I couldn't care less. I was kind of shocked that Scott would allow that to him to like survive.
That's the one thing I was iffy on too. So, and I don't remember him playing a big role in Near Dark. I'm not sure where this goes. He could play a role. I just don't remember.
Dark, so yeah,
and you haven't read it.
Yeah.
I will say Near Dark is might be less about the setting in the background and more about where Scott is in life. So how the book opens, but
it's like how Mitch is after Consent to Kill. You know,
Mitch goes on that bender. Yeah. He's almost pulling a Stan Hurley with the. I think Thai hookers are involved, or a lot of drugs in Southeast Asia. It's an almost Stan Hurley move by Mitch. So, yeah, I don't think we go that far with Scott. Oh, okay, so what'd you think? We talked about the plane crash. We love the survival instincts of him in the crate fighting. You know, he doesn't fight the wolf pack just yet, but he's checking. He shoots a few of them and he scalps the dudes. But eventually he has to take off. What'd you think about him leaving the crash site? And it's pretty soon after he leaves, he stumbles upon the cabin, right?
Yeah, it's like he's snowshoeing along and he sees this bend, and, you know, literally it's like an oasis, right? That, you know, he needs to pass this river. Right? He needs to figure out where he's going to shelter, and then boom, he comes to the fork in the road and he sees this cabin and he makes this choice. Am I going to run? Am I going to risk it? And I think that's one of like the most suspenseful parts of the novel, you know, that I would say that, and the part where he gets attacked by the alpha, like later on, when he's then leaving the cabin, that were just riveting. One of the most cinematic, I think, portions of the novel. Like you would love to see him try to traverse this river, fall in, have to, you know, lose his gear, get rid of his jacket,
right?
And then try to overcome, you know, seeing these hallucinations, being pushed by Lara's ghost, you know, being told to like, you know, get a fire going, like get under it, you know, all this stuff. And then to pass out, and then to realize that, you know, he wakes up in a cold, dark cabin with this dead dude sitting right there. And they're like, how the hell did I just survive that? Like, it's crazy, you know?
Yeah. It's a little respite.
Again, he's very respectful to Christina's uncle.
Sure.
You know, takes his clothes, but, you know, brings him back in when he leaves and, you know, puts a blanket over him, shuts the door so that way he doesn't get attacked by wolves.
Yep. Make sure to finish the bottle of vodka.
Exactly.
With the boys later on the plane.
I mean, it is like, you know, kind of, what's that literary phrase? Deus ex machina, like, where, all right, so he stumbles on this cabin. This guy happened to be a fur trader.
Has everything he needs.
Has
the snowmobile.
Has a snowmobile with a GPS.
But he also has to MacGyver that, though. He has to do the solar panel or
that
whatever.
kind of stuff is cool.
Charge
you know,
the
like,
battery.
Again, more suspense. Like, is it going to work? You know, he has one shot at this. Like, you know, it's all the typical beats that you would have in a survivalist story like this.
Dude, and that's what's crazy, and it's why I brought up the 12th Man. In Norway, there you can do like a hiking trail, which is said to be nearly impossible in the winter, of the real story. So that's based on a real story, by the way, the movie. Yeah, you could read the book of the guy. There's a book about him, Jan Balstrad or something like that. He's a real Norwegian soldier who went through this, and there's a cabin, and it's turned into like a museum or an exhibit now, and it's literally just like this, a small little hunter-trapper cabin that he used, literally would have died if he didn't get there at that moment. And the way it's described is so uncanny, and it's a true story. So yeah, even if there's little things, the Deus ex machina of like, oh, isn't that helpful? This cabin right here, but that was true, right? Like the Norwegian fields, like those big snow fields, and they're dotted with these little cabins that people use, and it happened in real life. So that's another reason I brought up the movie, is that it's so realistic because it happened with this one guy.
Right. Yeah, and then he has to push on to the town, gets attacked by the wolf, is able to, come out of that bloodied, beaten, makes it to, of course, there's going to be these small little towns with a clinic, gets in the
medical clinic.
And then immediately we finally are out of this isolation period where he meets with Christina.
Yeah.
I feel like Brad does a pretty good job of having us quickly buy into the relationship that she would want to help him by having her husband be, a
Wagner. Yeah.
someone who went to Wagner, not because he wanted to, but because he needed the money, died.
She had a grudge. She was holding a grudge.
Exactly. Putting in the work to make us buy in to, her quick turnaround, wanting to help this guy.
Yeah.
He even mentions that, a lot of these people in the outer parts of, distrust, they hate Russia just as much as they hate the next guy, right? So,
and they need a buck. The restaurant scene where she's getting the burgers, it's like they're offering a pretty meager reward, but for the people there, it's like twice the annual salary, and they all are like going to get beat. She watches the Wagner guys beat this dude outside. And so she has a grudge against not only Russia, but also this paramilitary force. And she sees the opportunity to help the American as the right thing to do. And you got to think she's also the town doctor. So she is somebody who's going to be more humanitarian focused than blindly gung-ho following orders and doing what the paramilitary people want. So I bought that she would help Harvath. A great little back and forth conversation with them. And then it gets very intricate because she finds out about the uncle, right? That Scott, the cabin he's describing was her uncle's. They bond over that, right? That helps them establish a rapport. And then she does her duty when she's under pressure, man. The other most intense scene is when Teplov, I think his name was, the Wagner guy, is interrogating her and wants to go to the uncle's house. And they set up this elaborate ruse to distract them with an atlas, and they circled things in the atlas going the wrong way. But she had a page from the atlas in her car.
that was like,
That was so tense, dude. It was so tense.
That's another trope that you have to have in one of these novels where you come up with this brilliant plan and why didn't I burn that? Why didn't I just toss that out the window? Why did I shove that like she does, shove it into her, the car seat just to get her away? Or
she did a good job.
She
played her role.
She should have eaten it.
Should burn it. Just burn it. Yeah, but so she played her role, and it was so
why
suspenseful.
didn't Scott just take it?
Yeah, it's a little silly thing, but man, when you're under that pressure, you can't do it perfectly.
True.
She played her role well enough, but to cross every T and dot every I in the moment with these guys breathing down your neck, and she's lying and putting on a show the whole way through, she was bound to crack. And they only saw the atlas because she kind of glanced over at it.
Right.
I mean, she's not a spy. She holds her own, does a really good job. But if she all of a sudden was as good as just some super spy, it would be less spyable. So the fact that she cracks was okay. And it added the stakes, because I don't remember Christina much in the series, but I remember the scene at the clinic so vividly. I'm like, does she survive this whole ordeal? And I honestly, even though it was my second or third read, couldn't remember if she comes out on the other end.
Same.
So I was like, is this where Teplov kills her? Does Scott get even more mad that man, add Lydia, Ryan, Laura, and Reed, that they're on his conscience, that he feels guilty for. Well, now you've got these hunter-trappers. You've got this whole village. Christina's uncle. There's all these other people that are dying.
That you've endangered. Yeah.
That you've endangered. And those ones he's more directly responsible for. At the same time, it was their free will to help him. They knew what they were getting into. They knew the risks, and they took that risk. But that wouldn't have happened unless he brought his, burden to them. And it's just going to play on his psyche even more that so many of these people lose their lives.
Yeah, the brothers, the Sami brothers,
the ones who find him.
Yeah. They actually do perish with the sniper.
That lady is great. What's the healer lady who also takes him in, who knows Christina?
Oh, I forget her name, but yeah.
But she's great.
No, it's and I feel like I've seen this movie before. It's
right.
It's perfect. It's
right.
And he gets away. They get him. he sets up these traps. Dude, the decapitation with the wire thing that he sets up for those snowmobiles, I knew that was coming. He takes down a helicopter, and that's only, we still have 2 hours left to go, or, like 20 chapters left in the book after he gets Tetloff, right?
And then we also have a big chunk of the book after the extraction team meets up with him. To me, in my mind, I was like, getting across the border, however they do it, was like the end. I don't remember much beyond that. And I'm like, there's still a lot of time left. They just essentially saved him. And it's the revenge story at the very, very end. So yeah, this book goes really, really fast through the first 3 quarters.
Very fast.
And then its pace kind of slows down in that final stretch. It's still really good writing, great storytelling, but it's a different pace of storytelling than the rest of the book.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of need that reprieve, though.
Yeah, because it was just like heart-thumping, like nonstop, from literally the first page with the crash. So you want to talk about the extraction? Getting the team back together?
Dude, it was so much fun. It was just, even when they're assembling, when they're hoorahing it, like getting ready to do this thing, like every single one of them is bought in. It's literally everybody. Now, who are the ones who actually get flown in with that Russian drunk? And that was interesting, that they have to kind of accept this guy, the only guy willing to fly them across the border.
Who happens to hate Americans.
Yeah, who hates Americans. And what intel service are they working with? Like the Finnish, their version of like is it an Air Force?
I thought it was the Finnish,
just
like SEALs.
Finnish intelligence.
No, I thought they were like some sort of special forces group.
Special forces, yeah. And they're not willing to cross the border, which makes complete sense. So they have to have kind of just an average citizen, average Joe, who's willing to do something dirty and can't be official, can't be on the books. And he ghosts. He leaves them.
You knew that was coming too, though.
Yeah,
like,
they were teeing that up.
Yeah. Like that, this guy, not trustworthy. Yeah, pretty cool. Like scene where he gets him down. I think it's Haney and Stalin that are in the plane. They even mentioned the
and Ashby,
and it was like was one of the best executions they had ever seen. Even those guys like freaking rip-roaring drunk off vodka.
And he's got the skills though.
Oh, also, what did you think of their idea to crash the snowmobile into the water, just like sort of like divert them?
Yeah, that was interesting. Diversion, hide the evidence. Yeah, it was another way to make the Russians think Harvath's dead, but they're not stopping until they have a body. Yeah, no, that was a neat little play. It's little details like that enrich the story so much.
Yeah.
So
Scott doing taking down the helicopter scene is just,
it's wild. Yeah.
Crazy. Improvising an IED with some buckshot, like.
Yeah. Yep. Taking apart the shotgun shells.
Mm-hmm. Love that stuff.
Yeah, he's doing all of it. Now, that was an earlier one where it was just him and Christina when they shoot down that chopper. Later on, though, how do they get out of the situation where the whole team is kind of pinned down? Oh, and this whole like platoon of troops just landed, and that's when they're all pulled back because of Peshkov. Yeah, President Porter put pressure on Peshkov and told him to fall back.
Yeah, that's the only reason they get out, is because you knew that something was going to happen with the reason they brought in, I forget the guy's name, but he's like a negotiator, right? Like you knew that sort of piece had to eventually come to. Yeah, Rogers.
That guy was good, like a special envoy or something.
Right.
A diplomat. Yeah,
like expertise in getting people out of foreign countries that get taken.
Yeah. And Scott thanks him for that. He really gives him a heartfelt thank. And another random character is Militante, the FBI director, who's liaising with McGee at the in the opening scene on the lake at the crime scene. But then also throughout the book, he just also gives a lot of good like overhead and like is around and briefing the president. This whole team it's just clicking. Like that is really the team you think at the White House, in the Situation Room. Who are you calling in? What voices are you hearing from? They're all at the table. As well as he fleshed out all the stuff in Russia, which was very detailed. He was also doing that back on the home front with the intel guys and the national security apparatus. I just thought that was handled very well.
wasn't too much. Like, you know, we weren't constantly cutting
was light.
back.
It was light.
It was very light, but what was there was needed.
Because it's like the Apostle. It's a single story of Scot on the ground escaping. You can't cut away all that much. It has to be like an 80-20 balance.
Right.